be a triathlete, you have to be willing to work hard, put in your time, and get used to being uncomfortable. To be an off-road triathlete, you have to be willing to face some obstacles along the way. But to be a professional Xterra triathlete, you have to have something special, something extra. And for Deanna McCurdy, having a child with a rare genetic disorder is that something. Although she was always blessed with the ability to run, this opportunity has given her an inner strength, an ace up her sleeve that has propelled her to the top of the sport. This multiple-time Pan Am champion has decided to attack this disease the same way she attacks the race course. And she wouldn't have it any other way. Deanna has united with Miles for Smiles to not just solicit support, but is actually looking to implement a cure for Angelman Syndrome, determined to eliminate this disease. And see how she's using this as inspiration on the race course. So lace up your trail shoes and grab your mountain bike, and good luck keeping up with Deanna McCurdy. You guys have been in Colorado now for how many
5 years.
5 years? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she still has memories of Georgia.
She has
can still
memories of
remember
Georgia.
a
You know, I
little
think
bit
she
of
was,
it.
third grader-ish when we moved. So she does, and so she still has memories. She has like a cousin here. She has some friends here. But coming back now, she's starting to like, oh, I miss this. You know, she's appreciating some of the things, and
Right.
which is really neat. You know, but yeah, she does not want to go home tonight. I mean, other than she
No kidding.
she misses the dogs, and we need to go home to see the dogs.
Sure.
But she's like, and I was like, you know, you could always go to college back here, and if she ends up in college here, I could see us ultimately ending back here. You know?
No kidding.
Yeah.
How about that?
I mean, this is home. I mean,
Where are
this
you
is-
guys at in Colorado?
We're in the foothills right outside of Denver. If we have to live in the Front Range of Colorado, which is just a suburban sprawl, it's the best little
That's the
hidden
best spot to
secret
be, yeah.
in. But
Well, and there's been so much growth in that
it's
area.
out of
that
control.
whole.
and the house prices. Talk about sticker shock coming from the south. You know,
Yeah.
there's so many people moving from California and Texas, and they're thinking they're getting these great deals, these houses that literally are sitting on top of each other with no yard.
Right.
And that's what they love because it reminds them of home, where we're like, we just want,
Doesn't
you know,
feel like the
no,
South at all.
and you know, when you're looking at the house that you can afford, you're like,
Yeah.
this house would be a starter house in Georgia.
It's so
a
funny.
$600,000 starter house.
Well,
You
it's
know?
funny because they have that kind of a California bungalow style house in that area.
Yeah.
You know, so it kind of fits
It's the
with
same
that region.
developers
Yeah, that same kind of
that kind of
feel.
came over,
yeah.
and they love it. But
Yeah, but for us, we're used to these
we're
big
like, get out
giant
in the
houses.
country.
Yeah,
We want
lots
our
of
land and our
space
space.
yeah, land to roam and everything. And which is weird too, because out there they don't have all the trees and everything, so you do have that feeling of open space. But they're stacking and packing them out there.
Oh yeah.
It's unreal. Well, I guess we'll go ahead and get started,
Okay.
man. This is
Sounds
awesome. This is the Extraordinary Podcast, and my guest today is Deanna McCurdy. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, where are we?
We are, I don't know, we're in Big Creek Park in Roswell, Georgia.
Yeah. Just got done wrapping up a Dirty Spokes race, where once again you were up on the podium.
I just love being out here. You know,
Yeah.
it's just, there's something about the whole atmosphere. It's like I didn't want the race to end because I was loving the trails so much. But at the same time, I wanted it to hurry up and be done so I could catch up with all my friends at the finish.
Right.
So I was like, but they're all there. I want to get, you know,
I was going to say, you had them kind of lining up to see you. Now that y'all were back in town, everybody knew, so everybody's very excited to see you.
It's just been such a joy to be back.
Well, it's so cool because we've talked about it on multiple occasions on this podcast. The Dirty Spokes family, or the Dirty Spokes clan, is just such a tight-knit crew.
It really is. I mean, it when you say family, I mean, that's what these people are to us. You know, they are an extension of our own family. They just grabbed us and embraced us the first race we ever did and have just kind of held on over the years. And it's been neat to come back home, you know, now that we don't live here. And we do really plan our trips around, oh, when does Tim have a race with Dirty Spokes? Oh, conveniently, we can actually kind of get home that weekend. So
That's outstanding.
It's like a reunion.
Yeah, I was just taking a bunch of pictures and going through the whole, it's like a little family reunion kind of thing. Well, and it's cool because we both got into the Dirty Spokes scene through similar means, but we kind of missed each other in passing. You guys kind of took off to Colorado right about the time that I was getting into the Dirty Spokes scene. So although we have all these mutual friends together and we linked up on Facebook and social media, we actually didn't really know each other personally really at all.
Exactly. I was like, who is this guy stalking me?
Right, exactly.
What does he want from me? Why is he sending me these questions?
You're not the first person that said that. So, yeah, I'm not a cyber stalker, I promise. But no, you definitely appeal to me because there's so many of the things that you have accomplished are so many of the goals that I have. And I was really anxious and excited to get you on this podcast because I really wanted to dive into some of how you got into triathlon and specifically Xterra, but let's back it up a little bit and talk about how you got exposed to Tim and the Dirty Spokes realm and trail running and all that.
Oh, goodness. Tim and Dirty Spokes, we're from a little town called Peachtree City on the southwest side of Atlanta. And when I was back there, probably about, I'm guessing 8 years ago, I was doing road triathlon and road running racing, and mainly because we had Peachtree City has 90 miles of golf cart paths, so everything's paved, so you're on the roads. There weren't many trails down there. Yeah. Exactly. But we always loved coming up to the mountains. I mean, we lived up in Kennesaw area and would run at Kennesaw Mountain, and then we had a cabin up in Blue Ridge, and we'd escape up there on weekends and run and mountain bike on those trails. And so trails have just kind of always been my church. It's my time to be out with myself, to kind of work through things out in nature. And so here I was back in Peachtree City running on the roads all the time, which were beautiful. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful, but looking for my escape. And I had a buddy that I did road running with who was coming down. Dirty Spokes used to have a race down
down by the prison,
Dawson,
right?
Dawson Trails
County?
in Jackson, Georgia. And he's like, come do that. And I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. But it was this reason to go, and went down there and instantly was just embraced by not only Tim, but just the whole crew. I mean, some of his volunteers used to do adventure racing, and my husband and I, that's how we met, through adventure racing up in the North Georgia mountains. Huh. So it was just great coming back and seeing Johnny Gardner. I'm like, these are the same people we knew from back when we were dating, and they're all still together. Yeah. And here it's my escape on the trails, but I just was able to kind of find that happy place out there. And then to be surrounded by the people, in addition, it was just bonus. And then you come hooked. You come hooked from day one, and you crave it. You can't wait till the next time you go.
It kind of becomes an addiction after a minute, for sure.
It does.
Your first exposure into triathlon was on the roadside.
It was, yes.
So tell me about that.
So I started road triathlon back in 2010. I'd always been a runner, ran track in high school, and I ran cross country for a year in high school, ran cross country in college, and then after college kind of kept running. I didn't know why. I didn't like running. It was so bizarre, and I had a talk last week, and I talked to a bunch of high school kids, and I was like, I really didn't like running because running hurts. I mean, running's really not fun necessarily while you're doing it, especially if you're running hard. But for some reason, I had this talent to run, and so after college, I was like, I don't know why I've been given this talent, but I have it, so I better just keep using it because there has to be some reason that I have this ability to run. So anyway, I was always a runner, but after the birth of my second daughter, she had a lot of medical challenges, and we struggled a lot the first year of life. I mean, we were in and out of the hospitals, in the PICU. I mean, she struggled with breathing. She had reflux, lots of pneumonia, and at 16 months, she was diagnosed with a condition called Angelman Syndrome. So Angelman Syndrome is it's a rare neogenetic disorder, not inherited. It's one of those lucky flukes of nature. She's missing a segment of her 15th maternal chromosome. They call them fragile chromosomes. It just flaked off, apparently, in the very beginning. And so her whole body is missing this segment on the 15th chromosome. That one little segment produces a neurotransmitter in the brain. And because she has such limited firing of that neurotransmitter, because it's not being produced, it creates a whole slew of symptoms characteristic of Angelman syndrome, such as she doesn't speak. She has a seizure disorder. She has developmental and cognitive delays. So, she didn't begin walking, taking her first steps until she was 3.5. She has a sleep disorder, which always was a lot of fun when she was young.
I was going to say, that one sounded like a real challenge.
That one teaches you how to run on empty and keep going.
Because that one is the most, taxing, because, that's the one that can really mess with you,
It can, because these kids, it's amazing for them. I mean, they can be up, as we call them, partying all night. Literally 2 a.m. She is ready to have a good time. And, as parents and caregivers, we're totally drained because the next morning she's ready to go. It's That's so odd that they don't require as much sleep. Now, fortunately, as she's gotten older, it's gotten a lot better. The first day anywhere we go when we travel with her, She doesn't sleep the first night. We've just kind of gotten unfortunately used to that. It's just, it's a new environment.
That's what it is,
and, but then.
Too much stimulation kind of thing.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like I said, she loves to party. So she's always like, no, what's the next best thing coming along? So
that's great.
So getting back to your question. So that's Angelman syndrome in a nutshell. So after she was born, my personality is the type if I'm presented with a challenge, I want to figure out how to fix it. And do something about it, and not accept it. I'm like, I'm not just going to accept how life is.
That's that triathlete personality.
It's just that drive. Yeah. And so here I have this child with this disorder, and I can't fix the disorder. But anything you read about Angelman syndrome on the internet, because the internet has all the answers, right?
Right, yeah.
And it sounds horrible. And you're like, this feels like our family's been given this life sentence in jail. All those dreams of the camping trips, the house with the little picket fence and my girls being best friends and them eventually going off to college someday together, and that just stopped, Suddenly that dream is gone. And so my way of dealing with it was like, okay, well, here's the condition. Now what can we do about the condition? And we are so fortunate that there was a group of parents who had similar personalities to us. And they founded a foundation called the Foundation for Angelman Syndrome Therapeutics. It's also known as FAST, F-A-S-T.
Nice.
And they're way smarter than me. And they wouldn't settle for this is our life either, and this is our child's life. They looked at the condition and they said, it's not like a condition like autism spectrum where you don't really know what the cause is. The funny thing is with Angelman's, a lot of times it's misdiagnosed initially as autism because there are very similar characteristics. Right, because their characteristics are so much alike, sure. And but here we know genetically exactly what's going on. We know down to the itty bitty little molecule exactly what's going on in the body. And so they found the foundation to specifically raise all the money that they can raise to go towards research, to not just finding therapeutics for the condition, but to actually cure the condition.
That's what I liked.
That's what, gets me up out of bed in the morning that says, yeah, we have all this hope. And this hope, now granted, God and I had these couple talks back then. I was like, I think I can do this until she's like 4 or 5, but come school age, yeah, let's be done with this. And, God obviously has different plans. She's 11 and still hasn't.
Clearly.
But, he works in his time. But
yes.
But each year, like I said, the research just gets more and more exciting to the point where this coming year, they're actually doing human clinical trials on actually there's like 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 clinical trials coming up for gene therapy, which is a very fascinating therapy where they actually take a dormant virus that all our bodies have, and they can insert the missing genetic material into the dormant virus and introduce it either through cerebral spinal fluid. There's different methods, and it will go up to the cells in the brain, and it crosses the blood-brain barrier and can infiltrate the cells and kind of release that missing segment, release either that or release the neurotransmitter, and there's all these, like I said, different avenues to create that.
Wow.
So we have, we are right
That's
there
exciting.
with research.
Yeah.
And, between that and then another avenue of research is, so she's missing this segment on her maternal side of the chromosome. But the paternal side, the dad's side, is perfectly healthy and normal because she's had her own chromosome system mapped out. So we know that, it's there. And it's just dormant. And so another focus of research is turning on that paternal side. And if they turn it on, boom, that side starts producing the neurotransmitter. So it's really cool. Like it's exciting. It's very exciting. So, not that I would wish this on anybody, but at the same time, if you're going to have a condition, we have such I don't want to call it a support group system because I'm not into support groups, but we have such this amazing network of people.
A strong community.
Yes. And with the shared belief, and it's really, like I said, it's really exciting. So getting back into how did I get into triathlon from all that? So once she was diagnosed, and here I had always been a runner, I thought, I need to figure out a way, how can since I'm not smart enough to cure this thing myself, but I know people who know people who are. What they need is they need money. And so here's my way of raising money is I can raise it through fundraising. And so we founded back in January of 2011, Team Miles for Smiles kicked off.
Miles for Smiles.
And we call it Miles for Smiles because these kids with Angelman syndrome, with all their crazy issues they might have, they all have the same characteristic smile. Like literally, these are like the happiest kids because of some miswiring in the brain. They are incredibly happy. That's one of those odd things of the condition. They don't know why, but we take it. You know, we're like, these kids are happy, right? and so we're called Team Miles for Smiles. And I decided instead of setting running races goals, because everybody knew I was a runner, I needed to challenge myself. I'm like,
step it up to that next level.
I have a kid who has to be challenged every day in therapy to learn how to stand by herself, how to walk, how to feed herself, how to toilet, all of those challenges that are so hard. And you don't realize how complicated they are. I'm like, I can challenge myself to learn how to swim. I mean, I grew up playing in pools, but was I ever a swimmer? No. Ride a bike fast. I enjoyed riding bikes, but ride a bike actually fast.
Well, yeah, and fast through trails, that's a whole different game.
It is. I've set my first, quote, fundraising goal is I did Ironman 70.3 Augusta. In 2011. And I was like, she's working hard in her stuff. I'm going to work hard and we're going to set that, and we're going to set a fundraising money goal. And and that's how I got into kind of the road triathlon thing. But thanks to meeting Tim and Dirty Spokes and being introduced to trails, I'm like, I kind of like the trail thing. And then learning that, they actually have off-road triathlon. Yeah, I initially did an off-road triathlon as a break from the road stuff, and then I got
just
hooked.
To change it up.
Yeah, it's just like the trail running. You get hooked. It's that community. It's a smaller, kind of off the grid kind of community.
It is. It's a different group for sure. It's a different dynamic and all that for sure.
And I love it. And that's why I get so tired sometimes of training and racing, but we can't stop it because we're like, no, these are our people.
Right?
This is our way to go see our people. So
well, and I find it just a lot more rewarding when you're out there in the woods and having that connection with nature too. Even like the community part of it aside, which like you said, we have such a great group, especially with the Dirty Spokes crowd, but even the Xterra community, like you said, it's kind of close-knit group, but that just being out in the woods, I think there's just a different connection that you get. Like you said, therapeutic. I think that's a good way to kind of describe it. Xterra can be a very intimidating sport for a lot of people, especially for whatever reason. It seems that a lot of young ladies tend to be a little nervous about the mountain biking aspect of it. How was that for you, and how did you get into the mountain biking? Or did you have any fears or reservations about that, or did you just kind of dive into it head first?
So how I got into mountain biking, that's kind of actually another funny story. I wanted to be a cool girlfriend.
Nice.
That's how I got into mountain biking.
Excellent.
I met this guy, you see.
This little cute boy.
Yeah, and up at the Nantahala River, actually.
Oh, no kidding. Awesome.
And he was racing an adventure race up there, an 8-hour adventure race. And I had a coworker who was going up to volunteer. And so I went up for the weekend with her and pretty much just sat around and ate a lot of food. While everybody's racing,
everybody else
I'm at their little snack stops and I'm eating the snacks. And
that's great.
After a few hours, I was like, I think I need to work. Everybody else is out here working out. I need to work this out.
Start feeling guilty a little bit.
There was a part of the race that was you ran. Or the participants were in rafts going down the Nantahala River rafting, and that they had to raft, I guess, like 8 miles to the finish line. I don't even remember how long.
That's a cool race.
And it was. That was the last stage of the race. And so I decided, well, I'll just run, and I'll meet them at the finish. I'll run along the road that parallels the river.
Yeah, go right next to the river, yeah.
Yes. And as I'm running along the road, some guy in a raft in the river stands up in his boat and starts yelling at me that if I wanted a real workout, I should be running upriver instead of downriver. And I was like, who in the right mind? First off, why is somebody standing up in a boat going through rapids and yelling at a girl just out running?
And that was David?
That was my future husband. Yes, yeah. After the race, I walked straight up to him because I was like, the nerve of that guy. And then I looked at him and I was like, he looked so much, it's funny, unscarily like his dad. And his dad was the second realtor in our small little hometown ever.
No kidding.
So his dad's picture was on every church bulletin, every grocery cart, right? And so I see this guy and I was like, are you from Peachtree City, Georgia? And of course he puffs up his chest. Well, yes, I am. And I was like,
funny.
Seriously, and because you're from the same town I'm from,
and you're meeting in Nantahala, North Carolina.
I
of
know
all places,
that's I was like, God had a plan for us. We joked because
great.
he was a senior in high school and I was a freshman. I mean, we were in very different social groups. We've seen pictures of each other in high school. We were meant to meet later in life.
Not at that time. Right?
He was Mr. Soccer Jock. I was in the band. Yeah. So we were meant to meet meet up in the Nantahala. And anyway, so yeah, we came back right after the race. He's like, so you run. Do you bike? We need a girl on our team. And I did not
He starts
bike.
reeling those, hooking you in.
Yeah, I was like, so he loaned me one of his bikes, which, mind you, he is about 8 inches taller than me. So the bike wasn't necessarily fitted.
Right. You're small.
And next thing I know, he's teaching me not only how to mountain bike, but he's teaching me how to mountain bike in the dark with clipless pedals.
Oh
so like
goodness.
just totally throw me
into the wolves.
Yes. But because some of these races go at night, and I'm like, so yeah, I had to learn the hard way, which is pretty much how we've done everything in life, learning it the hard way.
Life, that's for sure.
So that's how I got into mountain biking initially. And and if I survived that, our relationship survived that,
hey,
we could survive anything, right?
That's a thing into itself right there.
So
sure.
So that's how I got into the mountain biking. So coming into Xterra racing, fortunately, on most Xterra courses, especially out west where we are now, it's a ton of climbing,
and
it's not really technical. I mean, because they don't want it too technical because they don't want it too intimidating, you know. And I mean, I'd say
they
most
don't want to be
courses,
scraping people off the rocks every couple of times.
Exactly. Plus, you've already swam, and you have to run after it, So climbing, unfortunately, because of my build, it's that whole strength to weight ratio.
Oh, yeah,
I can
kill
climb.
it on the climb.
I mean, get people will fly by me, like my husband, on a descent because he loves bombing things, jumping things, and I'm like, I like my
you don't
wheels.
have any weight to carry you down a hill.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I kind of like keeping 2 wheels on the ground because I have 2 kids I have to go home to. I can't afford to break a collarbone.
Right.
So
ain't that the truth? And out there, it only takes one wrong turn for it to happen. That's the real deal out there.
So that's how I kind of got into mountain biking. And for other women, I know that's the biggest hurdle for them is that fear of being out there on trail. And sadly, and I don't want to say it with our culture, but there is a lot gender challenges with it. A lot of times, no offense to men, but some guys have egos. So you're out there as a female on a trail, and a guy's not going to let you pass, or you're going to have to take the harder line because they're taking the main line. And that can be tough, and that can be very intimidating and very discouraging.
Sure.
I think it's changing a lot. There are some amazing women out there now, and I think guys are starting to recognize, wow, these girls can ride fast.
And they're fast. Yeah,
they're fast,
so
and they
fast,
man. And it's fun to watch them because I'm getting older, and I'm floored at what the younger generations can do right now.
Well, I'm floored at what our generation is doing. You had mentioned it before, since when did the 40 to 45-year-old bracket become the top finishers? That's where we're at now. I'm in this age group now where my age group's winning this race, and it's crazy to me. It's unbelievable. But what I think is really cool about it is how it's just changed the perspective. Before, you hear that, 40's the new 30 or whatever, but the perspective of 40-year-olds now is a lot different than it was back then. And I think that's opening up a lot of new doors and a lot of opportunities for us to see what's really possible with physical and mental, the whole 9 yards.
I keep thinking they need to change the, when they do awards, they have 40 and up as masters, and then 50 and up as grandmasters. And one of our friends, Kim, she went up to get the Grandmaster Award today, and my husband was like, why is she going up for an award? I'm like, because it's 50 and up. And he looked at her, he's like, she's not 50.
No way.
Grandmasters. And I was like, honey, you're going to be there in a little over a year. And I think they need to move masters to 50 and grandmasters to 60, because there are 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds still out there doing all this. And I'm like, award them for, they're working hard.
Well, that's another aspect of Dirty Spokes that's so cool, is the fact that he recognizes those higher demographics and those higher age brackets. And that's what keeps it that whole family community vibe kind of thing. So you got into Xterra and you got into triathlon, and that's one thing. I mean, that's a huge commitment to get into the triathlon world. But then apparently you excelled at it really well, because then you took it to that next step and going professional.
So yes,
tell me about that.
So this year I raced as a pro for off-road triathlon for Xterra. I qualified, I think, the past 3 or 4 years, but it never was a goal of mine. My goal was always, like I said, if I can bring awareness for Angelman Syndrome, if I can, whether it's fundraise through it or through my sport, or spread awareness for it, or actually, and a lot of it had to do with, it's my own personal goals for me. I did not want to be defined as, oh, you're a special needs mom, and kind of in that. And nothing against special needs moms, because oh my gosh, they're the most hardworking moms. But I felt like I needed more in my life than just in the trenches with my child, fighting for my child every day. And so triathlon, especially off-road triathlon, became that sanctuary for me. It became that
Another
thing,
identity.
that other identity.
Yeah.
You're correct. And to have those goals, on a day when it's dreary, rainy, or snowy in Colorado,
Yeah.
and where I don't want to get out the door, but if I have a race goal, instead of sitting on the couch and saying, "Oh, woe is
pushes you
me
over that
today,"
edge,
I'm going to still get that workout in. And so I had those goals, and then I had success in it. And so then I started, because my personality, it's like, well, okay, I just won the national championships. Well, can I do it again next year? Can I do it a third time?
Where's it going to go from here?
Can I win every race in the Pan Am Series? And it was my own thing. And am I trying to do it against other people? No, it was me setting those goals for myself.
Setting your own internal goals.
Right. And
so
that's
what's so beautiful.
Then I got to this past year, I won the world champ. 2017 and 2018, I was the top American amateur crossing the finish line. And so funny, in 2017, I was 4th overall, but there were 2 other girls in my age group. Talk about 40 to 44. So I got a 3rd in age group medal, and I was 4th overall in the whole race.
In the whole race.
And I was like, this is the world championship. And it was funny. It ate at me. And usually, like I said, I don't care. I have a bigger goal. It's not placement. But for some reason, that just dug at me. And so the next year, I was like, that's it. I'm going back there, and I'm going to figure out. And I'm like, whatever, if I'm slower, faster. I mean, the course changes every year because of mud and conditions. But so last year when I went back, wouldn't you know, 4th overall again, top American. But this time it was actually, fortunately, the other 2 girls didn't show up that were in my age group. And so or one of them aged up or something. So I finally won my age group. And like I said, last year at Xterra Worlds. And so this year I thought, well, what do I have left? I mean, I've accomplished my goals. And I thought, when I'm 80, I have always wondered, well, what if? Why didn't I try to go pro? What would it have been like? And because, like I said, up to this point, it hadn't been a goal. Where there's so many younger people that's their goal is they want to race professionally.
The younger crowd, especially.
Definitely, and I have, like I said, I have 2 kids. We
have a different world going on,
right? And so I did this year, and it was interesting because I realized that my drive isn't all about winning races, and starting, like the pros start separately and they get this little separate special treatment. And I was like, no, I like duking it out with the masses. Like, that's my personality. I want my friends at the starting line where I am like giving them hugs and high fives at the start. But at the same time, I know once we hit the water, who's going to be ahead of me out of the water, or who am I going to chase down on the bike, and who's going to be coming up from behind on the run. And it's because it's like games within the race, with my friends, and that's what makes me love the sport. Not and
that's what's
winning.
So cool about triathlon too. They always say, like, you never win the race in the swim. Like, there's all these different components of it, and it's such a journey. You can't just blow it out of the gate. It's strategy, and it's this whole dynamic that goes on throughout the whole course of the race. And the dynamic changes once you're in the swim versus the bike and versus the run. That's really cool. What was one of your toughest losses or a failure that you learned the most from? I'm gonna make it hard on you.
No, I guess, I got to pick one.
I know, right? Well, that's the problem. Is if you feel like me, you got plenty to choose from.
Well, it's funny. It's like when I was so fortunate for so many years. Like, each race I did well. But when you finally have a rough race, you realize you want that rough race, because after a while you don't appreciate it as much. You need those rough races.
Isn't that something?
You really do. You really need those tough times, because it builds your character. I mean, you hate saying that, but it really does.
It does.
So I would say one of my toughest ones, 2-3 years ago, 2016, I had a tough summer. I mean, my husband was traveling a lot for work. I had both kids home, one with special needs home, and trying to be super mom, get my training in. I had a different coach. I had been using one coach. I switched to another coach that summer, and that coach was definitely much more into high volume and high intensity. And I'm the type that I train hard, but I squeeze my training in the nooks and crannies in life. Like, training doesn't take over life. And I was so worn down. And because of my personality, if she put workouts on the schedule, I was going to get those workouts in. I was going to figure out a way. And instead of saying, I'm tired today, I need to take a break. And so I was trying to get all those in. Like I said, husband traveling and the 2 kids. And came to, it was like Xterra Beaver Creek. It's the mountain championship race for them. And it's the end of July. So the kids have been home now for 2 months.
Summer,
And I walked to that starting line, started the swim. I thought I had a decent swim. Apparently my husband's like, something was going on with you in the swim. And he's like, you were so far back. But, you don't know really in the water. Yeah. And I started the bike, and about a mile into the bike ride, my brain wanted to go, but my body didn't. My body was just tanked. And I
You had just
struggled.
overtrained it, you think?
I just had worn it down, and I
Yeah.
struggled. And I mean, I was in tears because I was like, why isn't my body going? My
Like, why is it
brain is
responding?
racing,
Yeah.
and my body isn't. And I mean, I suffered through that. And I finished, but I
Good
suffered.
for you. You didn't
But
DNF.
I fortunately had a doctor appointment just for my yearly physical that next week. And I walked in, and she just looked at me. And actually, she gave me a hug. She's like, you don't look so good. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, I'm just feeling really worn out. I'm not sleeping at night. I'm waking up 5-6 times a night. I'm like, I had this horrible race, but I couldn't figure out what was going on with my body. My stomach's upset all the time. I had all these things. And she's like, I think we need to do some blood work on you. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I had put my body into like full on adrenal fatigue.
No
Plus
kidding.
you're,
That makes
I mean,
perfect
and here,
sense,
I know
yeah.
this may be a little too much information. You're dealing with female hormones in your 40s.
Sure.
Things are starting to change in the body. And so I was going through that, plus the adrenal issues, because my body was just so run down.
Yeah.
But it was so hard because I was supposed to, like in the next month, we were going to it's called ITU Cross. They call it, in the world of triathlon, cross triathlon is off-road triathlon. So it was not a non-Xterra event, but ITU Cross Worlds were in Penticton, Canada. This was like our big family vacation. Our family vacations tend to revolve around races. We're going out to British Columbia. We had over a week planned. We had a place to live where we were staying. The kids were coming. And all of a sudden, I can't do anything. And I went home. I fired my coach, which is a great person, but I was just like,
clearly
I
that was
can't.
not a
I mean,
fit.
I know my body, and I have, even if we took steps back, I'm still going to push myself too hard. I need to just cut it. I took tons of naps for 2 weeks. I really focused on my diet and started, again, research. Like, what are the things that are deficient in my diet? What are things I need to add? And I didn't have a bad diet, really. I mean, per se, because, I'm an athlete.
Right.
But I cut out. I found out I was drinking, coffee in the morning. Then I was having a fountain Dr. Pepper in the afternoon from the convenience store because I was about to fall asleep and drive in the car at 3 in the afternoon. And I just kept getting those highs and lows. And so I pulled back on all of that. Like I said, really focused on, just proper nutrition, making myself go to bed at 9:30 at night to try to start that sleep, doing meditation, just to kind of allow the body to kind of heal from the inside out.
Beautiful.
So that probably was the hardest race I ever had to get through. But at the same time, I learned. I did. And the funny thing is, one of the symptoms of all of that is sensitivity to, cold. And so in Canada, the cutoff for wetsuits, it's like ITU rules. It was 22 degrees Celsius or something. And we were 0.2 over, or it was 21.6 is the cutoff. And the temperature of the water was 21.8, which is still really cold. It's still 71 degrees, total. You'd want to wear a suit normally. So that one race, this was a whole festival of races during the week. And for some reason, our race was the only race that didn't get a wetsuit. Every other race that week. But for some reason, that one did. And so I had a horrible swim. I mean, because I got cold. I was started off, I was feeling good. And then all of a sudden, people started passing me. And I was laughing because I was like, my arms are moving, my legs are moving, but I'm not going anywhere. And I get out of the water, and I notice my bike is one of the last few. They're just sitting there. And my husband's
That's always a terrible feeling.
Did you get lost and swim to the other side of the lake? The lake's 30 miles long. It's this huge, deep lake out there. And I'm like, no, but I started my bike, but then I had one of those, you had to say it, screw it moments. Screw it, the race is gone, whatever. I had the fastest bike split of the day, and I think the second fastest run split of the day, because I just didn't care. Right. And I ended up, I was 5th overall at the ITU Cross Worlds. And it was just comical because I had such a horrible swim, but I
just going to show you how those races go, man.
Because a month before, I could barely get out of bed. And so, having that in that moment, and then, I use that momentum, I think, from there as that lesson learned. You need those really rough races to reevaluate. Like I said, I was starting to get not internally cocky, but I can eat whatever I want. Sure, I can have beer tonight.
Well, once you start plateauing and you kind of start hitting all gears and everything's clicking, you do get a little cocky. You get, I would say cocky, maybe confident, or maybe a little overconfident.
Overconfident.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, that was probably
That was
a tough one.
Huh? Was Nationals or was Pan Am Championship your biggest win? Was that a big win for you, or did you have an aha moment with the sport?
So the Xterra Pan Am Championships are in Ogden, Utah in September. And it is beautiful. The leaves are just changing out in Utah. I mean, it's cold in the morning. Sometimes it's freezing in the morning. You can start the race when the air temperature is 39 degrees, but that makes 65-degree water feel like a bathtub.
Yes.
So, but it warms up quickly. It's tons of climbing. It's my kind of race. I originally went out there actually for Xterra Trail Run Worlds with a whole bunch of the Dirty Spokes crew, and I saw the trail race. The running race, and this was back when we lived in Georgia, and I remember watching the triathlon go the day before, and I was like, there's no way I'd ever do something like that. I'd never done Xterra at that point, and now I'm like, okay, now it's become my absolute favorite race, and I've won it overall like 3 years in a row. It's just one of those. It's so hard, but it's so filled with joy in the moment of the suffering.
Yeah. And I've found too, like hard things are so much more rewarding.
Yes.
Like when things come easy to you, it's great, you succeed and whatever, but like when you accomplish those hard things, those are the things that stick with you. And those are, like you were talking about, the mental fortitude and like the toughness that you get from doing these hard things. It builds your confidence and it lets you know that you can tackle other hard things as well.
I always say that my daughter with special needs is kind of like my secret weapon in my back pocket. She has taught me how, like I said, sleepless nights. I mean, you're not talking like, when they're babies, ours struggled. Usually babies start sleeping through the night at like 12 weeks long. This went for 2 years, waking up every 3.5, 4 hours, and all of the illnesses and the times in the hospital. I'm like, nothing that I do out there is harder than staring at a child in a hospital bed, hooked up to oxygen and willing them to breathe, And so me pushing up mountains and conquering things is easy relative to something like that. So when I get there onto a race, and I'm really hurting. And if I'm going back and forth with somebody, it's almost like I have that little trigger in my brain going, yeah, but I bet she hasn't gone through that. I mean, everybody has stories, but I just use that as my own little
your ace in the sleeve kind of thing.
Yes, like, I'm gonna duke it out and I'm gonna dig it in here because I know how to dig.
And you were talking earlier in the Pearl Izumi piece about that mental fortitude and that mental toughness that you get for one, we get just as parents and getting older, but then two, when we have those challenges to overcome with special needs kids, it helps you. Well, and it also, again, it's that perspective, it changes that perspective.
It does.
Makes you look at things completely different.
And it makes you realize a lot of times, like when I'm out there, racing, and you're in a miserable spot at sometimes. But I'm like,
you're dying.
I don't have to do this. I get to do this.
Exactly.
There are a lot of people who don't get to do this opportunity, and I get to suffer right now because I'm putting myself in this position.
Yeah, we're paying good money to get out there and torture ourselves. But it is great, and I have to keep in mind of our time, so we're going to run out of time before we get to everything I want to. So, what's something odd, weird, or different about you compared to most other people that has led to your success? Is there anything you do different? Do you have any routines that are other than your crazy workout schedule?
Odd, weird, or different? When I am incredibly stressed, and I've been like this since high school, college days. If you ask my mom, she'll tell you every time. Especially out in Colorado, people they're healthy in general in Colorado. They also like craft beer because there's a brewery on every corner, and
Funny you should mention that. When I was there 2 weeks ago, we did two of our episodes at Timnath Beer Works in Timnath, Colorado. Yeah, with some friends of mine that have a brew pub.
It's good stuff out there. So part of
the
reason why we work out. Yeah. But especially like up in Boulder area, or when I swim with a big group of road triathletes. I'm the only off-roading in the group, so they always kind of look at me funny because sometimes I just don't care about what my watch says and stuff, and they're also structured on the times, the intervals.
Isn't it so funny how that works with the road
everything's about diet and special diets. Oh, this person's gluten-free. Oh, this person's vegan. Oh, this person doesn't like that.
Drop another grand on my bike.
Yeah. And I would say one of the odd, weird, different things to me, when I get incredibly stressed, like I did this last week before the day we were packing to leave to come to Colorado, and you have so many things on the agenda to get done, I make chocolate chip cookies from scratch. Like the good old Toll House recipe. I've had that recipe memorized since I was in high school. And my mom used to remember I'd come home from college, and I know there's a whole salmonella thing in the batter, but I take my chances every time because I barely eat any of the cookies because I eat way too much of the batter. By the time the cookies are made, I'm like, my stomach. But yeah, I think that's kind of a weird, odd thing. Like, I like my sugar, you know,
awesome.
and it's something about the good old homemade cookies.
Well, we'll stay in a kind of a fun lane, but I do want to jump into some serious stuff about your daughter before we wrap up. What's one thing under $100 that Deanna McCurdy could not live without? Professional triathlete.
I dare not say Fountain Dr. Pepper from the local gas station because, again, another weird, odd vice of mine. But, you know, when it's 79-cent fountain drinks in the summer, man.
Okay, so full disclosure, my thing is the frozen Mountain Dew slushies at racetracks.
See?
That's my little...
It's a southern thing. It really is. We got our race done, and so I've earned my Mountain Dew slushie for the day. So as soon as we're done here, that's my first stop. I know.
So that's awesome that you've got the Dr. Pepper thing going on.
We're in the South, you know. But, yeah, I would say, I mean, honestly, my special treat. And I've tried. I blame it on my husband. He's the one who got me into that. I was a sweet tea drinker before. You know,
sweet tea's not much better. I mean, that's horrible.
I know. I remember working at a pizza place in college, and my job was making the tea, and you would watch how much sugar, and I was like, ooh, okay.
But it sure is good, though.
It is, yes. And so, so I laugh because he's gotten me into it. And I have to think, you know, we cut out, and I really need to cut out it, but we would cut it out. And then I found I was snacking so much more during the day. I'm like, finding that kind of that craving, like, sweet tooth,
sweet tooth. Something.
And right. I mean, after a really hard workout, I'll have my recovery drink, and then we'll probably have lunch or something. But then that late afternoon, it's like, it's that special little, but Deanna, you just worked your tail off for 3.5 hours out there.
Well, and that's what makes it okay, right? Like you can get away with that when you're...
If you have balance. And that's the big thing. I tell people that it's the same thing with wine, with beer. If you have balance in it, you know, I drink, true. I mean, we lecture my 14-year-old daughter, you know, it's like I have, talk about a 44-ounce fountain drink, but I have a 44-ounce cup that I finish that whole thing of water by the time I'm driving her to school in the morning. You know, from the time I get up, it's like I just sip on the water. Beautiful. And all of a sudden she's at school. I might not have worked out yet. You know, I might work out that day after they're in school. But I've already filled that thing of water. And then I'll have another thing of it before lunchtime. So it's like you're stockpiling all of that if you get that little treat here and there.
Yeah.
So that's very much under $100, but don't add up the total cost per year.
It probably would work out to be about that if you put it all together. But that's great. No, I appreciate you sharing that. How do you get your information? Or what are you reading? Anything cool?
You know, right now I'm actually reading, and I kind of scoffed at it for a long time because I was like, what would this girl know? Rachael Hollis.
She's awesome.
She's
really awesome.
I am reading her books right now, and I
love her.
Loving them because they're so lighthearted. Because I was like, but she's younger than me. She has healthy kids.
What does she know,
she's
right?
Gorgeous. But she is so down to earth. And whether it's like talking about her doing a plank and her baby stretched belly fat hanging out, or, you know, random
just keeping
things,
it real, right?
The hair on her toes. Yes. I mean, and I love that. You know, not only is she like empowering females, but she is very personable. And I was like, she's such a
relatable.
Yes. I kind of picked up a few of her books, and not that I got to read on the airplane on the way here, but that's what I
in theory, right?
Right. So
do you do audiobooks?
I need to get into audiobooks. I realize that because I drive my daughter to school, and it's 15 minutes each way.
Perfect, yeah.
And all it is in the morning is commercials. You're
terrible.
Just stuck during that time.
That's a great time to listen to the Extraordinary podcast.
I know. And I'm like, and she would love it. And I was like, we need to get into starting, like you said, your podcast. Pick some podcasts. And just sit through them, because then she's at such a neat age 14, to where we're having really cool talks and discussions.
Yeah, things are about to get dramatically different.
Right. And I just want to keep that line of communication open, because, and that's why I love this little drive time in the morning. I'm so thankful that we have it, you know, and I'm so glad she's not driving herself yet.
With soccer practice. And I take them individually to soccer practice, but my oldest daughter, we went to soccer practice, and she started talking when the second we got in the car. We were walking out to the car. She talked the entire 15, 20 minutes to get to the soccer field. Didn't stop once, but I was just like, it was so great that she felt that she could just let it all hang out, and just lay it all on me. And it was just, it was a real rewarding experience as a parent,
Yes.
And gosh, I mean, she's only 9, so it's all good right now. But if they're still doing that at 14 and 15, man, you really know you're onto something.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping. You never know.
Right. Well, and
when
the
you
next
look
couple
back
of years,
in perspective, you're like, oh, I really screwed it all up.
Well, I was telling one of my friends, because I've got some grown kids too. It's like everything that worked up to 13 or 14. You have to completely change that game, because everything that did work up to that point doesn't work anymore. And you have to completely come up with a new set of rules, new game plan. It's just so dramatically different. At least it was for me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to talk about your daughter Hayden, and you said that she suffers from seizures as part of her illness. I'm curious, because you guys have moved out to Colorado and they had to legalize marijuana, and obviously there's been a lot of development with the CBDs. Do you guys utilize any of those? Have you guys experimented with any of that, or what was your experience with that?
We do, because it was funny. So many people from here, even a news reporter on one of the local Atlanta news stations who is also a triathlete, reached out to me when we moved there. She's like, oh, did you move out there because of this? And I said, no, we moved out there because it's Colorado.
Yeah,
and my husband had a job opportunity.
Because it's the triathlon training ground.
And we were just,
I mean, if you're going to be a pro triathlete, that's
going
the
to
place
explore
to be.
for a little bit. But when she was out there, like I said, her seizures, we've been so fortunate that they've been controlled with medication for so many years. And
other than marijuana,
just regular
or
medication,
THC,
correct? Yes,
CBDs,
and since we were in Georgia, and she stayed on the same dosage of medication, and we were out in Colorado, and still on the same dose of medication. She came home from school, I guess about 2-3 years ago. And when she was home for the summer, is when I started noticing her personality had changed. She was very irritable. And here's this kid who's normally happy.
Yeah, because she's happy all the time.
Scratching at people, hair pulling, and just didn't know what was going on with her. And so I tried to make an appointment to see her current neurologist. Okay, but there's so few of them compared to the amount of kids. So I put in, and they put me on a wait list for 10 months.
Oh, my God.
And this is her, she's already a patient of theirs. So in the meantime, because I was like, something's going on, but I don't know what.
And I'm not going to wait 10 months to figure it out.
Right. So I was like, we live in
crazy.
Colorado. Why not? Everything I'd read about it, it's not addictive. It's something that's natural, in nature anyway. So it's not a chemical that's going to have reactions with other chemicals.
Absolutely.
And so I was like, why don't we just try it? In Colorado initially, you had to get a medical marijuana card,
right?
Because she's a minor, and because if you used any of the products that had the actual THC in it, which is what has the hallucinogenic effects, but it also apparently is more effective in terms of sleep and calming and focus.
Absolutely.
And so we had to go. It was kind of scary to go see. These are certified doctors, but I had to go and get 2 doctors to sign off. And as we were sitting in one's office, and he's like, just in the 10 minutes you've been sitting here, she's had 6 drop seizures that I've noticed. No, she didn't have the drop seizures at the time. She had these absence seizures.
And explain what a drop seizure is.
So a drop seizure is what I always pictured the basketball player in high school used to sit behind me in history class doing, where you're sitting there and your head just nods, and you're trying to stay awake, and
right,
your head nods and
off
and a lot of drop seizures look like that, like somebody's just nodding off, and it's quick. And she had those at one time, but this time she was having absence or absence seizures, as they call it, and that's where she just kind of briefly stare off, kind of into space, and then blink her eyes, and she'd be back, which I notice so many kids do all the time. And we do all the time.
That.
Where you zone out. Exactly. But you don't realize,
time.
Is that a seizure
or
is
a
it
seizure?
just...
No kidding.
And for her...
For her it is.
For
anyway.
her, it was seizure. And he's like, I just saw her do 6 of those. But you have to really be paying attention and know what to look for. And so we started the CBD oil with her, and it was like instantly all of that was gone. And
kidding.
Her sleep improved because, of course, she was having these during sleep, which is probably making her wake back up.
Right,
Sleep
so that
better.
would be a perfect way to wake her
focus in
up.
school was a little better because, again, her brain isn't fuzzy. It's not bothering her behind her
eyes. And that was just with the CBD. That was with no THC.
Right. Yeah.
No kidding.
And so we then decided we didn't need the card anymore because now it's like, so not only is there a brewery on every corner, there's also
a weed shop on every corner.
So, and we actually, the funny thing is that what she uses, it's from she doesn't actually use a product in Colorado. It's a product from
California?
Washington State.
Oh, no kidding.
And a mom with a child with Angelman Syndrome did all this research and created a product.
Found the right strain
it's called Wings because kids with Angelmans, they always say angel wings, wings. So she's been using that product for the past now year or two. And it's not a cure-all, but it really does. It just allows her, like I said, to focus in school, to actually sit there and not be so busy where she can't sit still.
And be comfortable. I mean, it just seems like they're getting a level of comfort sport.
And like I said, there's nothing addicting. We're not having to constantly. The hardest part is finding that sweet spot, figuring, because if you give them a little bit too much, it can make you irritable, make you not feel right.
Oh, no kidding.
And if you give them too little, then you're just like, well, it's not doing anything.
Yeah.
But that's the big challenge right now, and I think that's what the hardest thing with the regulating that in the industry is.
Yeah, because there just hasn't been much research.
Exactly. They need to have come up with standards and parameters based on child's height and weight and build and all of that, and that's where, they're still working on some of that.
That's really cool. And you were saying in one of your other interviews that they had a cure for this at one point in time?
So Hayden was diagnosed she was born in 2008, was diagnosed in 2010. And that same year, they cured it through, of course, genetic engineering, which you don't want to do on children, in the mouse model back at Vanderbilt University. So, genetic engineering, that might cause you to have a third limb or something.
Got an ear going out
yeah,
the back
they don't
of
do
your
that
head.
on humans, But again, that gave us that initial hope. Like, they could figure it out in the mouse. First off, I'm amazed that they can create things like mice and rats that have Angelman syndrome. That in itself blows my mind away. But to not only have that, then they can actually create them and then do studies with them, which is fascinating.
It's really cool. It's really neat because I've got a lot of the I've got a buddy of mine who's all about his wife had a breast cancer, and he's just committed to doing this rowing challenge, but it's not for the pink ribbons and all that. It's actually for a different cause, to do the research, because apparently a lot of the breast cancer stuff that's out there, a lot of these Susan G. Komen stuff and everything, it's all about like support networks and a lot of other good things, but it's not research for a cure. And that's what I think was so cool about Miles for Smiles, is it's all that money is going towards research, towards a cure.
Right.
That's where I feel like the money needs to be going, and the fact that you guys have had the foresight to do that, I think is beautiful.
And like I said, and it wasn't started from us. It was started from the parents who founded FAST. And really, they branched off from another organization because same thing. The other organization was funding money towards research, but it was also towards advocacy, towards flyers, towards walks, towards all this. And they were
which is nice.
Yes, and they had a paid, every salaried board. And these parents were like, that's great and all. And the way I look at it, it's a competition to the finish line. Honestly, I don't care who gets the credit for, is it the Foundation for Angelman Syndrome Therapeutics, or is it Angelman Syndrome Foundation getting the credit for funding the research that ultimately cured it? If it cures it, that's what we want.
Good enough for me. Yeah, I'll take it.
And friendly competition is awesome. As we all know, we rise to another level if you have somebody who's going to battle it out with you. We chose to go, take sides with our group just because of our personalities. And like you said, it's nice to have the fluffy feelings of, we're doing these good things, but what's the end goal?
Yeah, for sure. Who's somebody that you would like to interview if you had a podcast, or if you were listening to this podcast, who's somebody you would like to hear on this show? Because we're out of time, so I'm already gone over.
Now you stumped me. Now you stumped me. Now there are so many. Okay, so Dirty Spokes. Tim Shore. So he gives so much to so many other people. Not only does he put on all these races, he's a teacher. He's,
tennis coach,
hardworking teacher, tennis coach, involved parent. He has great kids.
And hates doing podcasts.
See? Well,
because
we keep
funny.
picking at him with it. Because,
I keep gnawing at him.
We said this last night. We happened to pull in here because we were curious where it was. We pulled into the parking lot, and Tim is getting out of his truck to pre-ride the course and everything. And I'm like, he had to drive. But he came from work on a Friday night, did that, gets here how early on Saturday morning. And has so much energy, gives every person a high five across the finish line. I want to know what drives him, because he is so good, and his family are just such good people, and they do this week after week after week.
And they're just such a well-oiled machine. As soon as you do any other race, you appreciate Tim and his family so much more, because they just have it figured out.
They set the bar
so high. They set the bar.
Yes.
They absolutely set the bar. And he's actually one of the first guys I talked to about doing the podcast, and he has agreed to doing it. But,
just got to find free time.
Yeah,
he trying
to pin him down and trying to work out the logistics has proven to be a little challenging and tricky. But Big Peach Guy's got him on the podcast, so I know that I will too. So too worried about that. And plus, he lives so close to me, I can eventually just hog tie him down and force it on him. But he's definitely coming through for sure. We're gonna wrap it up. I really appreciate you taking the time. And gosh, there's so much more that I really want to talk to you. But you guys have a flight to catch back to Colorado, so we got to wrap this up. But before we go, what's one thing on your bucket list?
Bucket list. I am so fortunate. Like, my bucket list is overflowing with things that have been filled already, just with these adventures.
We've already gotten to do so much, haven't we?
So much
We're
more
so
because of my child. I mean, we have raced in different countries. We have met so many different people and had so many, successes that it's really been so great. So each year, like next year, my husband and I have been having this heart to heart. Maybe it's time to take that break from off-road triathlon, because as much as I've loved it,
it's good to shift gears.
You're getting older. There's only so many years left to do all these things. So, I'm looking at some mountain bike races. There's a race called the Breck Epic. It's a 6-day-long mountain bike race.
Up there near Breck.
In Breckenridge. So at 10,000 feet, 50 miles like each day. And so we're toying with that for next year. It's hard because it's right when the kids start school. That's the biggest thing, the mom guilt thing. It's it's not the race, it's not the challenge, it's not the training even. It's the mom guilt. So, things like that you always have on your kind of...
But the cool thing about that is you're setting an example for your daughters, both of them, quite frankly. And you may have some guilt about it's taken away from school and all that kind of thing, but the example that you're setting and the bar that you're setting is setting them up for success long term. And it's certainly something that's going to stick with them. I mean, obviously your daughter raced today. It was her first race. So clearly that stuff's rubbing off. And gosh, thank goodness it does, right? You're a huge example to not only just your girls, but to all of us. I mean, like I said, there was a parade line lining up to talk to you because you're back in town, so you and your husband both. So really appreciate you guys taking the time. And we'll be sure to plug your Miles for Smiles and get information out there on social media.
Fantastic.
And you guys have a safe trip back to Colorado. And next time I'm back out there, we'll pick it up and we'll do part 2, because I do have another return trip.
Absolutely love it. And then I'm going to turn and put some questions on you, know.
Because, if you don't care, yeah.
That's what it all comes full circle, right?
Yeah, always, right?
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening. So what'd you think? What did I miss? Anything that you wanted to hear that I didn't cover? What do you want to know more about? Who would you like to see on the show? Hit us up on social media and tell me what you think. Check us out on iTunes and please leave a review. We're now on Patreon, and your support there helps let us know we're headed in the right direction. We have a lot of exciting new things coming, fascinating guests, and some of the craziest stories you won't believe. So stay in the loop and check out more great content by subscribing at our website, 8keystoGreat.com. Special thanks to my guests and all those of you living an extraordinary life. This is Nate G. We'll see you next week.